Uh, okay, hello, shalom. Today we are studying Pirkei Avot, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Vav, Chapter 1, Mishnah 6. Let's start off by reading the Mishnah, just understanding the basic phrases, and then we'll try to go a little deeper. Yoshua ben Parachia v'nitai ha'erbeli kiblu mehem. So we are in a series of Mishnayot now that are teaching us teachings of zugot, pairs of sages. And today it's Yoshua ben Parachia and Nitai ha'erbeli, received from their teachers in the previous Mishnah. Yoshua ben Parachia Omer, Yoshua ben Parachia taught the following. Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a teacher. Ukenei lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself a friend. V'havedan et kol ha'adam lechaf zchut, and judge every person favorably. So as we have seen in previous Mishnayot, one way to go about studying the Mishnayot is to see if there is, because many Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot are made up of numerous phrases. Right. So one way to study Pirkei Avot is to look at each phrase independently and to consider that Yoshua ben Parachia taught these three things, and they're bunched together not because they're thematically connected, but they are mentioned in the same Mishnah because one person said them. And the Mishnah is the storehouse, if you will, of the sayings and the teachings of Chazal, of our sages. And so that's why these statements are found in the same Mishnah. And there are some commentaries that when you read them, they don't try overtly to connect the two comments or the various phrases within the Mishnah. On the other hand, another way to study the Mishnah is to consider the possibility that there is a conceptual relationship between the various phrases in the Mishnah, and taken as a whole, they provide sort of an overall picture of whatever that particular conceptual idea is. And so we're going to see some commentaries today, some who try to connect the various parts of the Mishnayot, and while others don't feel the need to do that, and are just comfortable explaining each of the sections independently. So I wanted to spend a little time on the Rambam today because the Rambam has a very interesting and somewhat well-known explication of friendship that he develops as a commentary to this Mishnah, as a commentary to the part of the Mishnah that says, Kenei lecha chaver, the acquire for yourself a friend. But before we get to that, let's look at the first phrase of the Mishnah. Aseh lecha rav. So here is what the Rambam says, and we have it here in the source sheet. The Rambam says as follows: Ratza lomar. The Mishnah wants to teach us the following: Afilu lo yihiyeh ra'ui lihiyot lecha l'rav. Even if a particular person is not worthy of being one's teacher, or translated here as one's mentor, aval sim otcha lecha oto lecha l'rav. Nonetheless, make that person your teacher. Ad shetidmebo shumelamed v'yala biyadcha. So that you can give and take, meaning discuss and argue with him. As a result of the study of wisdom will come to your hand, right? Because you can't compare studying with someone to studying alone.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because when you study with someone, ideas are bounced off one another. Ideas are challenged, thoughts and approaches are sharpened. And so even if the person is not necessarily your superior in study, The fact that they are just another human being, in some cases, the Rambam says, you should consider that person your teacher, because by virtue of the fact that you're studying with them, the whole study experience, the whole quality of the study experience is improved by virtue of sharing it with someone else. Right? This is reminiscent of another teaching in Pirkei Avot that says, Ezehu chacham halomed mikol adam. Right? Who is the wise person? The one who learns from everybody.
Oh, yeah.
If we're willing to learn, if we're willing to open ourselves up and we're willing to see the person we are in conversation with or in discussion on a Torah topic with as a potential teacher, then we are going to benefit a great deal from that study. And that's how the Rambam understands Aseh Lecha Rav. And the reason why the Rambam does this is because if one needs a teacher, if one is unable to study on their own, if one is superior to everyone else, if one needs a teacher in order to understand things, then it's clear that they need it, that they have to find themselves a teacher, and we don't need Pirkei Avot to tell us this. But what the Rambam is contending here is we're dealing with a person who may not need a teacher, or the particular person that they have encountered is not worthy of being their teacher. Nonetheless, says the Rambam, right, there's always something we could gain from studying with someone else, again, even if that person is not necessarily on our level. So it's a very egalitarian approach to study. It's not to say that studying with superior scholars is not important. That is also important. But here it's telling us that even studying with someone who is on par with us, or maybe even we are more knowledgeable than they are, the fact that they are another person with their own brain and their own experiences and their own approach to life makes them worthy of them to be considered our teacher, even if it's only temporary, even if it's only for that moment. So that's what the Rambam says on Aseh Lecha Rav. And we'll notice that the Rambam does not attempt to connect the various pieces of the Mishnah. Okay, now, before we get to the Rambam, let's go to the Rambam on friendship. Let's stick with the Rambam just so we get the whole picture of what he has to say. Now, on the issue of friendship, on the issue of Kanei Lecha Chaver, the Rambam and others pick up on this distinction of language. Let's go back to the Mishnah for a second. Right? When the Mishnah talks about finding a teacher, it says Aseh Lecha Rav, right? Which is translated as make for yourself a teacher. But when it comes to friendship, it says Kanei Lecha Chaver. Kanei is the language of acquire, and it could be in the business sense, like purchasing something, right? When we acquire a new suit, right? We've purchased it, and that Hebrew word kanei, liknot, that root kuf nun hey, could mean to buy something. So the Rambam and lots of other commentaries are puzzled why, when it comes to finding a teacher, it says make for yourself a teacher, and when it comes to finding a friend, it says acquire or purchase for yourself a friend. And the Rambam's going to address that, but I'm interested to hear if Cheryl or Brian, if you have a thought as to why the Mishnah changed language when it went from rabbi to teacher.
There's an idea that just came to me. So like in the first part, when you're saying, make yourself for a teacher, and then like you said, they don't have to be more learned, they could be less learned. And like we say, we learn from our students. I learn a lot from my students. So it just, to me, that implies that it's something accessible, very easy to do. Just get somebody and start learning with them. Don't have all this criteria or list of rules. But when I see the word ugnei, when you talk about purchasing or acquiring, that means that I need to put something into it. Okay.
Mm,
Like when I'm buying something, I've got to pay for something. Well, when I'm acquiring a friend, that takes my energy
right.
to acquire that friend. You can't take people for granted. You have to put your own effort into it. You've got to, work on the relationship. And that's what comes to mind as the difference between them.
Okay, that's excellent. You've really um, come really very close to what the Rambam has said, and we'll also see the Sfat Emet in a moment, also connected to what you said. Just to paraphrase, so finding a teacher, in the case of the Rambam's understanding, is opening yourself up to learning from other people. That shouldn't be so hard. Just have an open mind. But when it comes to a friendship, that really requires a lot more effort. And that's why the word kinei, to acquire, like I love the way you put it. You have to put something, you have to put yourself into it, just like when you purchase something. You have to give of yourself. I like that a lot. Okay, we're going to come back to that in a moment. Brian, do you want to add anything?
To make for yourself a teacher, you have to reach inside to actually be able to take in what a teacher has to say. It's not just sit in a classroom and be there while someone's mouth is going open and closed. So you have to make for yourself inside, whereas to acquire is an outward reaching kiruv process.
Oh, how nice. So asay is really about yourself, and we're going to see that a little bit later. That's a beautiful idea, right? That essentially the project, such an insightful comment, Brian. The project of acquiring a teacher is about the student's desire to open themselves up to learn from someone else. There's a humility involved in that, right? And a person has to be willing to say, there is something that I can gain from someone else's wisdom. I am not the depository, right, of all wisdom. I can learn from someone else. So that is a project that we have to engage in and embark on to change ourselves. While kinei, right, there's a give and take. There is almost like a barter, right, between you and the friend. Okay, all very, very insightful. So let's look.
I have one question there.
Yeah.
Is the shorish kinei, is it the same shorish as for kinyan?
Exactly. Liknot, kinyan, correct. Yes.
Oh.
Exactly. Which is a barter. Yeah. Okay. So the Rambam, first of all, talks about why what you both said is interesting, that the attempt to develop a friendship requires more of us, and the Rambam explains why. But Salomar, afilu. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the teacher. Now we're going to go back to where he talks about the friendship. He says, "Zechor oto b'lashon kiniyah." Right. The Mishnah uses the expression of acquisition. V'lo amar aseh lecha chaver. It did not say make for yourself a friend, or hitchaber la'acherim, or connect to others. Hakavana bazeh shetzarich la'adam sheyikneh ohev la'atzmo. The meaning of this is that a person must acquire themselves a friend, someone who loves them, sheyitkenu bo ma'asav v'chol inyanav, so that all of his deeds and all of his matters be refined through them. K'moshe amru o chavruta o mituta, as it says, either a friend or death. V'imlo yimtza'uhu, and if you do not find it, if it's not easy, and this is very much what both of you said, tzarich lehishtadel bo, you have to make efforts for it. B'chol libo, with all of your heart. V'afilu im yitztarech sheyimshechenu la'avato, and even if you have to lead them to becoming your friend, and other commentaries say, even if it means spending money on them in order to sort of grease the wheels, because friendship is so important. Because when you have a good friend who you could be honest with and who's honest with you, then you have the capacity to, as the Rambam says, to refine your deeds, to refine your to refine your actions. That's the value of a real friend. And so if there is someone who you think could be that person, you got to take them out to lunch. You got to take them for a cup of coffee. You have to be willing to spend not only your emotional and social capital, but some say you actually have to be willing to spend money, because that's how important a good friend is. So you were both really right on the mark when you talked about the importance of giving of yourself, and that's an element of developing the relationship between the two people. Before we get to the Rambam's models of friendship, I want to look at this Sfat Emet, because when I read this at first, it really surprised me. But I think, Cheryl, you said something very similar here. This is right to where my cursor is. It says, Midimakdim asiyat rav, shma mina she'ein ha-perush kamefarshim shechaver yoter yakar, rak shezeh rashai likach, v'rav asur mishum schar limud. So a teacher is not allowed to take money for what they do. So that's why it doesn't use the language of purchase. But for a friend, like we said, you could spend money on them. But then the Sfat Emet says this, Uperush hapashut. He says, but the more obvious explanation to me is, Ki chaver tzarich yoter liknot meirav. One has to invest more in finding a friend than in finding a teacher.
Yeah.
Listen to this. Ki mechavero yachol likabel yoter. Because one can receive or benefit or get more from a friend than they can from a Rav, from a teacher. This really surprised me, right? Coming from a tradition, ours, which is so focused on Torah study and so focused on teachers and students, right? And so focused on learning, that I would have thought that the position we would take would be that, yes, friendship is very important for the reasons we said, but it's really, really important to have a teacher. But the Sfat Emet is saying, no, maybe that's not the case. It is important to have a teacher, but we have to put more effort into acquiring good friends, because ultimately we'll get more from them than we will from teachers, which is, to me, such a beautiful idea. And I was really happy I came about it. And kol hakavod to you, Cheryl, for coming up with it on your own.
I think
it's a really insightful idea.
Yeah, I think it's part of, like we all learned so much from this whole COVID experience. And I live alone. So I learned what I lost by being alone. And like here, in terms of the friendship, man, I mean, I had to work very hard to at least keep one friend, and
Right.
That's, I think that saved my sanity.
So why is the Mishnah in singular and not in plural? Friend, not friends.
Hold on one second, Brian. I like what you said, Cheryl. It's really, we all learned so much from COVID. Yeah. And that's another lesson, right? How hard we had to work for that. Brian, yeah, it's a good question. Maybe, well, we'll get to the one about the Rav in a minute, why that's in the singular. But maybe, well, what do you think the reason is? I have a thought, but what do you think the reason is why it's in singular?
I think it's important to have at least one close friend, is how I understand it.
I'm thinking that maybe it's not realistic to really have more than one, really excellent friend. So maybe that's why it's, or maybe we're supposed to, work on one at a time, so we could really focus. And once we solidify that friendship, we can move on to developing a friendship with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
This is before Facebook, where everyone had thousands of friends.
Oh,
yeah, but they're not real friends.
Right, they're not friends in this sense. Certainly not in the sense that we're going to see in the Rambam. Let's look at the Rambam's friendship models. The Rambam is somewhat well known for this idea of different miles of friendship. We'll read it through. And there are three types of friends: a friend for benefit, a friend for enjoyment, and a friend for virtue. In Hebrew, he calls them Yeovim Gimel Minim Ohev. Ohev Toelet, right? That's a friend for a benefit. Ohev Minucha, a friend for enjoyment. V'ohev Ma'ala, and a friend for virtue. Let's color code these so we recognize that we're talking about three different phrases here. I like the muted colors. I'm not a big fan of the fluorescent. Gives me a headache. I have a flair for the understated. Okay, here we go. So what are these friendships? First he talks about the friend for enjoyment. He says is of two types: the friend for pleasure and the friend for confidence. Indeed, the friend for pleasure is like the friendship of males and females, and similar to it. I'm wondering what he means by similar to it. That's interesting. But certainly we understand the friend for pleasure when it comes to males and females. Whereas the friend for confidence is when a person, has a friend to whom he can confide his soul. He will not keep anything from him, not in action, not in speech, and he will make him known all his affairs, the good ones and the disgraceful, without fearing from him that any loss will come to him from this, right? So a friend who you know is not going to judge you when you may reveal your worst moments, not from him and not from another. As when a person has such a level of confidence in a man, he finds great enjoyment in his words and in his great friendship, right? There's a great benefit to that type of friendship. You feel you could unburden yourself. You don't have to hide anything. You could be honest with that person, and you know that the person is not going to hold things against you. They're certainly not going to use these secrets against you. They're not going to blackmail you. And that's a very comforting feeling to know that that one has a friend like that. That's the first level of friendship. Actually, I'm sorry. That's a friend for enjoyment. And then, hold on, I bled the two together. A friend for pleasure and a friend for confidence. Indeed, the friend for pleasure is like the friendship of males and females, whereas the friend of confidence is when a man has a friend to whom he can confide his soul. Right. Okay. I want to look to the Hebrew. Something looks like it's not right here. Let's read the Hebrew. I'm not sure what this English translation comes from, and I'm not liking it. So let's start again. Amnam ohev toelet ke'avat shnei hashutfin, v'avat hamelech u'machanehu. So the avat toelet is like two partners. I really don't like this English translation. Right? Yeah. So the friend for benefit is like a partnership, right? You benefit you mutually benefit from each other. Or like a king and the king's subjects, right? There's just it's almost like a business-like relationship. There's a give and take. V'amnam ohev menucha, the friend for enjoyment, who bet minim. There are two types of that. Ohev hana'ah v'ohev bitachon. Now we're back into the English translation. A friend for enjoyment and a friend for confidence. He says, "Amnam ohev hana'ah ke'avat hazecharim l'nekevot." Now we're back, right? Like a male and female. V'chayotzi behen. V'amnam ohev bitachon, the friendship of confidence. Hu sheyeh la'adam ohev tiftach nafsho bo lo yishmor mimenu lo b'maseh v'lo b'dibur. You won't hold anything back from that person. V'yodi'uhu kol in yanav hatov mehem v'hamiguna milbiti she'erab mimenu she'yasigehu b'chol ze chisaron lo etzlo v'lo zulato. Right. So the English translation just seems to be missing the beginning part about Friendship. Yeah, I'm sorry. I that was my mistake. The English seems to be okay. Yes, Brian.
I thought menucha means rest. I'm not aware of it meaning enjoyment.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was thinking that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the translation, it's a good question, but
I did just cheat and look it up on my.
No,
on my
that's good.
phone.
That's good. But when the
And-
Rambam gets into the definition, it really seems to be one is ohev ana'ah, like he says here explicitly. It's about enjoyment. So the Rambam is translating menucha within the realm of enjoyment. Well, menucha is rest, because I think you're right, because what he's saying is if you have these type of two friends, someone who you could enjoy, pleasure with, and someone who you feel confident with, it gives you a sense of menucha. Menucha is not just rest. Menucha is like on Shabbos, it's a sense of ease, like we're unburdened, right? So I think these type of friendships fit into that category. So menucha, we have to look at the idea conceptually more than the specific notion of rest. It's more like being at ease. And then finally, the third category is ohev ma'ala. And that is down over here, ohev ma'ala. Ohev ma'ala is this. He says as follows: Hu sheyeh ta'avat shnehem v'kavanatam l'davar echad. A friend for virtue is when you share with your friend the same intentions and the same goals. V'hu hatov, right? To do good. V'yitzeh kol echad le'azer b'chaviro b'hagia hatov. And each one wants to be helped by the other in reaching this good, lishnehem, for both of them together. V'zeh ha'ohev asher tziva liknoto. The Rambam says that's what's going on in this Mishnah. V'hu ke'avat harav l'talmid v'hatalmid l'rav. That is, and now what the Rambam does is he's connecting the two. When he says you should find yourself a friend, he's saying the type of friend that you're trying to find is the friend that is joined, that you and the friend have the same altruistic goals and you're helping each other reach them. He says that's very much like the rabbi-student relationship. So that's how he connects those two, the rabbi-student relationship. So this is the Rambam, again, somewhat well-known approach to friendship. There are these three types of friendship, and again, they're not mutually exclusive, and all three of them have value. But the Rambam says that the one that this Mishnah is talking about is this to'elet, this virtue friendship, where the two friends are sort of melded together in their goal, in their reaching a goal towards of some virtuous goal. Okay, I wanted to now how does judging people favorably come into the mix? I would suggest that if one the Maharal here suggests something very interesting. The Maharal says that when you are in close personal contact with a person who's a friend or your teacher, inevitably there's going to be conflict.
Oh, yeah.
And inevitably, one is going to think that the other is doing something wrong. So that's where the third part of the Mishnah comes in: judge everyone favorably. That when one is in human relationships in general, there's always going to be conflict, and there's often more than one way to interpret or to judge someone's action, and we should judge it favorably. That's how the Maharal connects all three of the pieces, that aseh l'charab, knei l'chachaver are our relationships with people outside of our home, not our family. And within those relationships, there's bound to be tension, and we have to work hard on giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to just look at one other really interesting commentary here. I hope I put it in. Trying to remember where I saw this. Maybe I saw it in here. Let me see, and I didn't put it in. It was really beautiful. Aseh lecha Rav was sort of taken not literally, but it means make yourself a rabbi, right? Aseh lecha Rav, make yourself a teacher, meaning look around your world and learn from whatever's out there, right? I thought it was such a beautiful idea. I wish I could find it because it was phrased so beautifully. Just don't remember where I saw it. Let me just look for one more thing. No, not there. No, I'm sorry, I can't find it. It was such a beautiful idea, but that was the general gist of it. I'll try to find it and share it another time, but it was really a beautiful idea. Anyway, so this Mishnah, I mean, we can go on and on. As you can see, I have lots of commentaries I've culled here to try to explain this Mishnah, but we're gonna stop here with this basic idea of and we'll just go back to what you all said at the beginning. Aseh lecha Rav is about building ourselves, making ourselves open to learning from others. So that's really work on ourselves. And Kehillah chaver really requires us to invest in the other person. And that sometimes is a time investment, sometimes may even be a financial investment. It's social capital, like I said, and that's why the language used when it comes to that is Kehillah chaver. I'm sorry for the back and forth about the Rambam's translation. It turns out it was fine. I was just misreading it, but the English translation is fine, and the Rambam's 3 types of friends. And my favorite point of the night is the Svat Emet, that the reason we have to spend more on our friends than on our teachers is because ultimately we gain more from a good friendship than we do from a good teacher. Such I think a not obvious point, but really one to be considered.
Rabbi,
So,
what's the origin of the name Pirkei?
Oh, you know what? I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
There is one source that I can check that may have it.
Don't worry.
No. Now you piqued my interest here. There is a really interesting. No, he doesn't have it either. No, perach is a flower, but the flower of God, I think it means. But I don't see anything here. All right, my friends, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for being here. Thank you,
Yeah,
Cheryl,
thank you so
Cheryl, for
much.
taking the heat off me.
Okay, and I will see you next week and on next Wednesday, but I'll be in Denver next on the 8th, 9th of July.
The
Thank
8th and
you.
9th of July. Okay.
Okay.
And then are we going to do Pirkei Avot again?
Next Wednesday, that's the plan, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All righty,
Thank you.
have a good night.
Okay,
Yeah, have
bye.
a good
See
night
you all.
and
Take
in
care.
advance, Shabbat Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Bye.